Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is that Erev Shabbos of Parshas Chukas is known as the day of Poronius. I don't know if you know that.
Really?
Yeah, it's brought down in the Mogen Avram. Why? Because in 1242, a long time ago, it was the famous burning 24 wagon loads.
So that's when the Shas was burned.
Yeah, it was the Shas, but the problem was what was burnt isn't printed stuff. It was before printing.
Manuscripts.
All the incredible manuscripts, we don't have them anymore. What they did is they gathered, it was in Paris. Louis IX, I mean, what he did was incredible. So he gathered, and it all started, that's a whole history, but he burnt, there was a decree in Paris, 1242, they burnt the Shas, they burnt Rishonim, Bali Tosfos, they just threw it into the pile, and everybody was stunned. I mean, it was a murder tragedy for Klal Yisrael, because there was no printing, there was no other editions of these things. I mean, you burnt the original. Who knows what was lost in that? So then I read that, so they had no idea, so somebody asked a Shelas Cholam, Shemayim, what is this? So they said it was a Gzera Min HaShemayim. Yeah. But they didn't say what the Gzera, why the Gzera was, and so on. And it happened Erev Shabbos, Parshas Chukas. It's not even a date. It's a Parsha Chukas, the day, which is Shabbos, Erev Shabbos. It's amazing. And so they ask, and it says, Do Gzera D'Oraisa. And it's funny, so it's Chukas,
right.
So it's Chukas Atera.
Gzera D'Oraisa.
Yeah. So many suspect the Gzera was because of, although there's no speculation, but what happened is many people, the Rambam died in 1204 or 1205, and many people came out against the Rambam. The Rabbi Yonim was one of the major people against him. Yeah. But anyway, he did tshuva, because after this, but what happened is many people came out against the Rambam, especially because of his Murah Nevuchim. It says philosophical, whatever, who knows anymore? Who even knows what the titles were? So what happened is they showed the Rambam to the Dominicans. It's one of these sects of Christianity, and of course the Dominicans. I mean, it's like the fox guarding the chicken coop. What is this? And all it is an opportunity for dinner. So obviously they came out and they said that the Rambam is heresy and all this kind of stuff, right? So what they did is they burnt the Rambam, and they burnt the Rambam in 1242, 40 days before the burning of the Shas. And many people said that this was a Gzera because what they did to the Rambam, and so on, But the astounding thing is that enormous amount of original documents were destroyed, and there was a terrible Gzera. And this Friday was Erev Shabbos, Parshas Chukas. And Friday is when the Supreme Court came out with their decision, their terrible decision, that same-sex marriages is permitted, legal, and backed by the Constitution, which now means that they have nationalized this throughout the entire United States. The repercussions are awesome. And what that means is ultimately, like I said, the problem is that the United States, one of the problems, the United States is a world leader, or at least used to be a world leader. Because the United States has done this, therefore the rest of the world will fall in line. It's not just the United States now. The entire world now fall in line with the same-sex marriages being legal. And so therefore, the decision by the Supreme Court, 9 people who are unelected, was a 5-4 decision. These 5 people, they have no concept of the oynish that is awaiting them, but they 5 people who are unelected has now charted the moral course of the United States and the entire world. And there are many people who are what's called fence sitters. Well, should I do this or that? And now that it's legal, and it's, It's permitted, and it gives you equality like any married person. A lot of people are gonna, if they feel feelings, whatever, they're gonna opt for this direction, where they wouldn't have done had this not been legalized. They just wouldn't have done it. That's all. If there's no equality and so on. So not only have they destroyed the United States, but they have destroyed the world, and they have destroyed who knows how many millions of people who are fence sitters, who are now marry same sex because it's legal. On the contrary, it's recommended, it's equality, and so on. So 5 people have taken upon themselves to destroy the world. They have no concept of the hustle of what they will go through and what they have done. And if you want to know what the Muslim is going to do, there are many things. There's a Yerushalmi, I forgot where, but somebody asked Eliyahu Hanavi, why are there earthquakes? Right? So Eliyahu Hanavi answered them, it's Yerushalmi, because of Mishkav Zochah. So he said, now, there's a lot of earthquake faults. It is very easy for the Muslim to destroy.
New York is close to a fault, isn't it?
Everything is, near a fault, so whatever, but the San Andreas fault that goes underneath California. Could you imagine I think the highest recorded earthquake is 9.6, which is absolutely devastating. I think the one that happened in Japan, I think moved the Japanese island 9 feet. What kind of force that is, and so on, 9 feet for the whole island. So what's to an earthquake? Because the whole tectonic plate moved, because that's really what it is. There are plates that the earth is sitting on, and what happens is, where the fault line is, which is the boundary of each plate, they rub against each other, and they rub and rub and rub, and all of a sudden it goes. That's what an earthquake. Yeah, it snaps.
Snaps back into place,
and then the whole place goes. So there's only one. I once spoke about it, but what happened in New Orleans? Right? Remember I told you New Orleans that on Monday, the storm. It was a marble. In fact, that's the Muslim can either do an earthquake, or he can destroy a city, like Sandy. Sandy was an Einish. It's not a big deal. And New Orleans, I once mentioned Monday. Monday, the hurricane hit New Orleans. Tuesday, it went over the walls, because they have walls. What do you call those walls? Levees, and it destroyed the city. And I was wondering why. I remember that I read that because Wednesday was a holiday. It's called Southern Decadence Day, when all manners of zima is permitted in the streets, and police do nothing, which is astounding. So what was so frightening about that is the Baruch took out a city because of the Mishkav Zochah, the zima that was taking place. A city.
It's amazing. Nobody, connected the dots in the Yeshiva.
No.
They refused.
Yeah. So we're no longer talking about a city doing this stuff. We're now talking about what? 50 states, and the whole world will follow. It's beyond belief. The truth is, it's frightening to live in America. To be honest with you.
I thought that from the time of Bris and Abesarim, there is no tumor brought down to the world besides for the descendants of Avram. Meaning, didn't you say that after Bris Abesarim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu removed the potential and
no, after the Mabel.
After the Mabel removed the potential from all the other nations, the potential to bring Zoyama to the world.
Yeah, but it had nothing to do with Zoyama. It's destroying mankind. There's no longer a matter of Zoyama. The Jews can bring down the Tumah, the Chatoim, right? But the Goy can destroy the planet. He doesn't have to bring down Zoyama. What the Jew can do is destroy the upper worlds. Okay. A Goy cannot do that. You see, a Jew can massacre in the upper worlds, right? He can Kedusha and bring down spheres and Kedusha. Or he can destroy the upper worlds, where the soul, the Kedusha, goes to the Satan, and the Satan nourishes off that, and he's Machrav Oilamas and so on. But a Goy cannot in any way touch the upper worlds, the spiritual domains. However, he can destroy the planet.
Is that the point of the Zion mitzvahs? That at least in
Yeah,
this realm?
without that, without the Zion mitzvahs, this earth would look like
And
a jungle.
destroy the planet in terms of
Yeah, the physical planet, yeah.
there's no reproduction. The reproduction, you mean?
Yeah, well, look, reproduction is not going to stop. But what they have seriously done is destroyed morality. Because I want to tell you something. Once they removed the traditional decision of marriage, I already heard some guy, some lawyer saying, okay, we now mounted same-sex marriages, no problem. Now let's mount polygamy. Why not?
Why not?
Well, if you've changed the definition, one man, one wife, why can't a guy have many wives? Right? And what about polyandry? What's polyandry? One woman can have 4 husbands. They practice that in Tibet, by the way, polyandry. For economic reasons. Very few countries do that. It's called polyandry, where one woman can have more than one husband, which of course is a nightmare to figure out, okay, who's the father? And so on, So,
But is it like the immorality more? It's like a precast all. It's more like getting rid of Hashem, basically. Because
what you're saying, in many ways, it's a very profound concept. Why do Goyim hate Jews? Why is there anti-Semitism? You see a tremendous rise in anti-Semitism all over the world. Okay, it's masked as anti-Israel, but really it's anti-Semitism. Just now, you don't want to say I hate Jews. I hate Israel, anti-Zionist, which is really anti-Semitism, Everybody recognizes that, basically. Why do they hate Jews? You know why? The secret is because the Gemara says, I think I want to mention this, that Sinai, why is it called Har Sinai? Because it created sinah against the Jews from the Goyim. Sinai sinah. So the question is, why did it create sin? Why? The Jews got the Torah, so now what? The reason why, the real reason, although there are sub-reasons, why the Goyim hate the Jews is because we are the emissaries of God's morality. Period. And they hate us for that. The only one who was really truthful about that was Hitler Mashamoy, where he said that the Jews have made mankind into wimps, timid. They gave us a conscience. They made us feel guilty. And he hated them because of that. That's a concept. He was the only one who's openly admitted when he wrote Mein Kampf. The Goyim have never forgiven us. Actually, they've never forgiven God for doing what he did, for taking over and being the authority of mankind. And the Jews, who are the emissaries, represent God. So therefore, the Goyim, hate the Jews, because when they look at us, they look at the Bible. It means the Bible. Everybody knows the Jews are the people of the Bible. Everybody knows that. You know what I'm saying? Anywhere in the world, they may never have met a Jew, but everybody knows about the Bible. It's the greatest book ever published and the most disseminated book ever known. So therefore, when they look at a Jew, hey, you're the people of the book. You're the people that had Moses and God and Abraham. You know what I'm saying? And you received the Torah and so on. They all know that. And then when you take Christianity together with Islam, they have spread the concept of the Torah all over the world. Of course, they've altered it, and so on. But they've really spread the concept of God and the concept of a redemption and the concept of a Messiah, Mashiach, all over the world. So everybody knows that. So they hate us because of the morality that we represent. That's why they hate us. Why else would they hate us? Well, what's the big deal? It's because we are the agents of God. And therefore, right, then the Rebbe has to protect us. Hey, in a certain sense, it's the Rebbe's fault that they hate us. If we had never received or we had never accepted the Torah, we'd be like every other nation. Every other nation hates every other nation. But we don't stand out. But now we stand out. And mankind has never forgiven us for being the emissary or the agent or the shliach of the Rebbe Shalom. That's why they hate us. What do you think liberalism is all about? Liberalism, left, progressive, I don't care what you call it. They hate religion. They hate it. And all those Jews that are in Hollywood, they hate God. Of course they won't say it openly, but leftists, liberals, progressives, they all call themselves the same idea, right? They hate religion. So therefore, they'll do anything to be puric oil. It's called precast oil, to throw off the yoke of God and His authority.
So the question is, how can they be held accountable for the decision?
Who?
Let's say the left, whatever we want to call them. If their whole lifestyle, maybe in the beginning they chose, let's say, to hate God, but since they completely Beshita secularized themselves, so then this is just another step in that direction. So
what's your question?
To them, it's not as bad because they don't necessarily see it as, because the reason why it's really terrible is because of religion. It's called, because God's basically called the worst type of arise possible.
Yeah.
So, but they don't give any credence to that.
So therefore, why?
So therefore, are they less culpable because of that?
It's interesting, Why is a shoygeg chayev a chatas?
It's chayev a chatas.
No. These guys are shoygeg. They don't know. So then why would they be culpable? Then they have to ask the question. If you're an onus, if you're compelled to do a sin, you're potter, because it's against your will. But if you're a shoygeg, if you didn't know it was Shabbos, or you didn't know this was Osa, you're chayev a chatas. I want to tell you something, a chatas costs a lot of money. An ox costs a lot of money. This is no joke. You do one sin, costs you $1,000.
Right, but the same
serious business.
These people are going to go bankrupt.
What?
They with all their millions, they'll go bankrupt.
Forget it. You'll have a million cattle coming to the base of it. All from the liberal left. So the question to ask yourself is, why somebody's a shoygeg chayev? Why, if you do something without knowing that it was illegal, why are you culpable at any level? And the answer is, what's the answer really?
Should have known.
You should have
It's
known.
enough publicity.
Because God has a tfi on mankind. He says, listen, I can't blame you for not knowing, but I can blame you for not seeking the truth. You have no right to do this. We're not talking about here a religion that started 3 days ago. This concept of the Torah, the Bible, as they know it, and so on, and the fact that it has major religions behind it, and so on, these are thousands of years old. Did anybody ever say to himself, wait a minute, I can't just dismiss it because I don't want to really do it. It's uncomfortable, and it's intervening and interfering with my lifestyle. No. You have to say, wait a minute, let me check it out. If a person says to God, I checked it out. I really checked it out. I did the research, I went on the internet.
That might be a chatas right there.
Exactly. It's always a chatas. But and so on. I went to the library, I spoke to the Jews, and I really came to the conclusion that there is no morality. Man determines morality. It's relative, I don't know, maybe the Moshe, then he has to really have said, I really did it, The Moshe will know, But that's far better statement that I really checked it out. All these guys don't check out anything. They don't want it. It's the old story. People are liberals because they want to be liberals. And they look for an excuse to back up the liberalism that they want to be. It's like the old story of Rabbi Chaim Soloveitchik. I think it was once on a train or something like that. So somebody came over to him and he said, I see you're a rabbina. Obviously looked at Rabbi Chaim. She said, I studied Judaism, but I have a tremendous amount of kashas, questions. So Rabbi Chaim looked at him and said, these are not questions that you have. There are answers. In other words, you really want to break away. That's the gift. However, you can't just go and walk away because you don't want to fool yourself and deceive yourself. So what you've done is you've created questions that justify your abandonment of Judaism. So Chaim said they're not questions, they're answers. Wow, what a psychological insight, right? And so on, same idea. These guys, a person in the end has to be honest with himself. Most people are incredibly dishonest. They practice self-deception all the time. So what happens is they say, deep down they don't want to see this. They don't want to see what the truth is. They don't want to be restricted by morality. Come on. I want to marry who I want to marry. I want to eat what I can eat. I want to do whatever I want to do. Don't tell me what to do. But their conscience bothers them, so they come up with great answers, you see. So a liberal is somebody, basically, that wants to pergoil. He wants to he wants to overthrow the yoke, of morality and ethics and so on. The concept of correct behavior. Except he can't do it right away, so he adopts a whole shita and so on. That's why God's going to go after them. Because you need to check it out, check out the truth, and so on. And all of them, what are they going to say? And check out everything. We want to break away, and we will look for any kind of justification to break away. And that's, in many ways, those guys on the Supreme Court. I think one of the main guys, it's funny, it was 4-4. You need one, who's the... Kennedy, yeah. Arthur Kennedy. The behemoth. What he did, he destroyed. The man doesn't know that one vote was 4-4. He was the deciding vote. Incredible. And by one vote, it's 5-4. He destroyed the United States, the rest of the world, and destroyed the lives of so many people that would never be doing this. And now they can do it because it is now respectable. If you're now walking down the street, I hope it doesn't happen in Lakewood, but you walk anywhere else and you see two guys walking down and holding hands for each other, which is what you're going to see. I guarantee you that. Two women is one thing. It's not an Easter, but two guys, or two guys, doing things together in the middle of a street, or whatever. This is respectable now. They've elevated an act which the Torah says is chayav misa, mos yumos. Believe this? They've now elevated it to an act of respectability. So a little kid is walking the street and he's going to say, what is this? He said, it's fine, because you're going to see a lot of people. Magazines are not going to have articles about this. There's a heyday for these guys. So that one man, Arthur Kennedy, has no concept of what's going to happen to him. Unbelievable. How one person can machayev the entire world and destroy the entire world. See? But at least the other 3 or 4, they wrote scathing reports, legal reports, to counter this. And they said the Supreme Court has destroyed the United States.
You think they washed their hands?
What?
You think they washed their hands?
Well, what can they do? But they said that where does the government get a right to legalize something which has been forbidden for thousands of years, and which we have major religions? Where does the government get a right to interfere? And many people say, listen, it's the state's obligation, not the federal, and so on. There's all kinds of legal arguments. But these guys are fuming. And they said the Supreme Court, by doing this, has set a precedent where government can now dictate, morality and what people can and cannot do. It's incredible when you think about that, And so I, in many ways, I'm very much afraid of what's going to happen to the United States. Look what happened to New Orleans. Look what happened to Thailand. Remember Thailand, good old Thailand? And how many people died? 250,000 people died in 2005. When that earthquake that went from all the way from one end of the Mediterranean all the way to the other, it was felt 3,000 miles away. It killed over 200,000 people. Why? Because that whole area of Thailand is a den of Zemo.
But look at San Francisco during the World Series. There was a huge earthquake.
What was that?
Down back in the 80s.
19.
But there's constant tremors there.
Because somebody said, I don't know, they made a comment, I don't know if it was in jest, probably in jest, but they said that California is past, they can't have a Mabel anymore because it's not going to, since they were the first, they're done with Mabels. Now Hashem's reversing and doing the opposite.
What's the opposite?
The drought.
Not raining.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, besides the kind
they died.
What do you mean
Besides
they were
that, but-
first?
The same-sex marriage and all these type of things.
Yeah, they have a drought now that's historic, I think. There's
You see
nothing.
a nice vista, you see an amazing vista of a river,
Yeah.
and you mentioned it's a very wide field of view where you can see a lot, and you see the sides of the mountains. There are mountains on either side of the river,
And you see
you can see
the line.
forget the
form.
line. It must be hundreds of feet of just where the river used to be and where it is now.
Yeah. It's incredible. Yeah, it's not just California. it's
Hundreds,
that whole,
but
you know.
I'm just
Big
curious,
amount.
before Kaaba was part of the Bria, there was another
Well, not
creature
Nevi'im, but
that was from the Adama,
Somebody
just
said
like
it's-
Adam.
enough with the marbles. Now we're going to hit you with something else.
And they were intended to be together, but they couldn't get along.
I don't know, that sounds like some medrash. There's a lot of medrashim which are very difficult to understand. I wouldn't even want to deal with that. I do want to say this, which is very interesting. It's famous and it applies to this. Okay? So those are really difficult medrashim.
It's
Different
pretty
creatures and
well known.
species. I don't know if it's well known. Was it well known?
Never heard.
Oh.
Never heard of.
I heard it from Rabbi Mendel.
I whatever. Anyway. But there's a famous medrash which says when Moshe Rabbeinu was telling Moshe Rabbeinu, is it Moshe Rabbeinu? I think so, I'm not sure. I think it was Artemisia. Which says, Naseh sa'otam b'tzalmenu, let us make man in our image, right? So I think it was Moshe Rabbeinu. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, what do you mean? How do you write Naseh? That clearly it sounds like there are many gods, you know, and so on, you know. B'tzalmenu, you know, and so on. So Moshe Rabbeinu asked the God, he said, you know, why are you writing this? It's gonna allow people to make a mistake about who you really are. So the Moshe says, no, they're not going to make a mistake. Because it says, Vayas Elokim is Odom B'Tzalmoi, in his image. So the Moshe said, Shuvosa B'Tzida. The real interpretation of that pasuk is right next pasuk, B'Tzalmoi, and so on, right? And then the Moshe says, Misha Yovoi, forgot the exact verse, Misha Yovoi, Litois, Yovivihit. You know, if you want to make a mistake, then you make a mistake. What is it? Yeah. So what's the Moshe really saying? This is what he's saying. Saying, listen, I have to write this down. Why? Because it means Nasa Adam, the Moshe sought counsel with the Malachim. So I'll medrash why it says Nasa, you know, and so on. But in order not to confuse people, I will write really B'Tzalmoi in his image. So the answer is there. Somebody's going to come along and make a mistake. No. Yomei V'yita doesn't mean that Moshe wants the guy to make a mistake. The guy's going to make a mistake because he wants to believe that there are many gods. You see, he has a choice. He can either look at Naaseh or he can look at B'Tzalmoi. You see. And that's what the Moshe does. Moshe says, listen, the truth, according to the MS, I need to write this. It may be an excuse for a guy, or it's a pretext, but I'm going to put down the real idea, what the real answer is. So the guy has a choice, you see. So if he wants to look for the truth, he'll say Shtech B'Tzalmoi. But if he wants a pretext and a justification why he can believe in many gods, then he has the ability to fool himself. What you see is the Moshe gave mankind the option to fool himself. He didn't make it so obvious that you can't fool yourself. He allows us the opportunity to fool ourselves. Look, when you have Bechira, not only do you have free will, but you have to have options to choose free will. It's like they say, right? In Russia, right? You can vote whoever you want. The problem is only one guy on the ballot. All right? This is the problem. Same idea, you know? Without options, even if you have free will, there's only one thing to choose. So therefore, the Rosham gave equal. Zenu mazeh osolakim. Koheles, right? So the Rosham will always give us options where if you want to fool yourself, you can do it. There has to be a way of fooling ourselves, or, you know, never we have to be reformed.
That's a Nachash represents trickery, sneaky.
Well, then the Noach is going to try to convince you, right, to take the option.
Not just convinced, but trick, just like.
However, well, yeah.
That's why this week the Nachash holding a banner represents that we were tricked, but we raised ourselves above the trick.
Okay, whatever. But anyway, but the main idea is, so therefore, Yovav Yita means if he wants to fool himself, there is a way to fool yourself. You see, this is to allow man, if he wants, Not because God wants to deceive men, but he needs to give an option where a guy can't fool himself. If not, then Bechir is worthless, because there is no option. Oh, same idea, These guys, that's what Rabbi Chaim Soloveitchik said, You don't have questions, you have answers, you see. You've allowed yourself to be deceived, you see, and so on, Therefore, what the Moshe does is for somebody who wants to seek the truth, you will always have the truth. But for somebody who needs a pretext or a justification or rationalization, he will be able to have it. You see, that's the time that Moshe will have to the world. I don't care if you didn't know. That's not the problem. The problem is you never sought the truth. Why? Because you didn't want to seek the truth. You wanted out. You see, for that you're a shoygeg. You see, and because of that you're chai v'chatos, and so on. And the Rosh will determine to what extent they're chai.
You say that any
You understand? It's a very important concept that there's always a way out. You can opt for many different things, but Yoga V'yita tells us that there's always an answer, a truthful answer. But the Moshe does allow you, it gives you an option where you can fool yourself. And this is what these guys are doing. They want a puric oil, you see. They want to throw off the yoke. You know what it's like? It's a classic story where a guy went into a forest and he sees a tree with an arrow, and there are circles. You ever see a target, right? Circles and circles. And he sees this, it's like dead center. That's not bad. Then he keeps going on, he sees another tree with another arrow, dead center. I mean, it's like it's like, who is this guy? Wow, what a shot, He finally goes another 1/2 a mile, he sees a guy. He says, and he says, the guy's got a bow and arrow. He said, you're phenomenal. I've never seen a guy who can dead center an arrow. So the guy looks and says, what are you talking about? I go over to the tree and I shoot the arrow into the tree and I draw circles around it. You see, that's exactly what it is. It goes, and it was, this is my target, but I need to justify the target. So I'll draw circles where it looks like, you see, same idea. I want to be political. I got to get rid of God, but I can't do that. Never an Apicurus. It's very hard to be an Apicurus, you see. So there you are. Darwin is a classic. Until Darwin came along, it was very difficult to be an Apicurus. I mean, they really had a hard time. Because how do you answer life, the origin of life? Life, how do you answer the origin of life? Not only that, how do you answer the fact that how did life originate? You know how complex life is? Consciousness, it's beyond belief, But how do you answer the diversity of species? Scientists hold there are at least 10 million different species on the planet. Many scientists say if you include the bacteria and also, which are also organisms, there are over, did I say 10,000?
10 million.
10 million. There are over 100 million species. It's the variation in organisms is beyond belief. And each one is different than the other. You ever look, a dog is one thing, right? And an elephant is another. Like, how in the world did this happen?
Not only that, each species, no two elephants look alike, no two dogs look alike.
But okay, that you can answer with genetic variations. Fine, even twins don't.
No, I'm just saying how complex.
Yeah, but the real thing is the complete difference in species. It's unbelievable, So therefore, you can't answer to. So an Apicurus had a very difficult time being an Apicurus. Very difficult time. So the Baruch had Rachmanos and Apikosim. I hate to say that. So what did he do? He allowed Darwin, who by the way was a minister, to come up with the theory of evolution.
The Catholic.
And now,
Catholic Jew.
No, Darwin is a Catholic. He's a minister, probably Protestant, England. So he came up with the theory of evolution, right? And all of a sudden, it allowed now everybody to jump on. Oh, now I can be an Apicurus with full consciousness, no problem, no guilt, no nothing, because he has explained that. Has he? Of course not. It's absurd. Evolution doesn't explain life, the origin of life, nor does it explain the origin or the diversity of species. Of course not. And there's so many other kashas on evolution. But what the Derech Hashem did is he has now allowed mankind to fool himself in terms of belief in the Creator.
Why is that fooling yourself? You could explain evolution within Torah concept.
Person wants to be an Epicurus. He now has the perfect way because there's actually a theory of how this happened, which of course is not really. Anybody who examines evolution sees that it's absolutely absurd. Why is evolution absurd? The Russian did something which is very interesting. Okay. It's not the greatest proof for a creator, as far as I'm concerned. And if a person was truthful, he would come to realize that. The greatest proof for evolution is not design. Things look like it's design, So people use the theory of design, the concept of design. Well, it's like if you have a design, so obviously it has to be a designer. No, that's not, I don't hold that's a great proof. There's something much greater, and you cannot refute it. It is the concept of the complexity of an organism. All species are so incredibly complex. Chance can never make such an organism. I don't care if it's timeless, billions of years. Chance cannot put a paramecium together, which is a one-celled organism. Paramecium is a famous one-celled organism. An amoeba, if you ever took biology and so on, right? It can't even put that. Do you have any idea how complex one cell of the human body is? There are books that thick in terms of the cell, the incredible complexity of a cell. Incredible. It's one cell. You put it together into a organ, it is beyond belief. It's just beyond belief what an organ can do. The heart can beat, right? The heart can beat, I forgot exactly how many times, 2 billion times over a lifetime, and never stop. It feeds itself, it repairs itself. It's like, wow. It's like, there's no maintenance required. It's just that if you can destroy it, but left on its own, the brain is something which nobody can understand the brain. What is consciousness? What is imagination? What is thinking, creativity, and so on? I once read that to equal the human brain, what you would need is the equivalent, of an administration that administrates 18,000 planets, each planet having 4 billion people. That's what the brain does. It has to administrate 100 trillion cells. Could you believe that? It has to talk to them, it has to have feedback from them. It's just beyond belief. And the brain is what, 3 pounds? 3 pounds of soft gel. You know what I'm saying? It's like what is this? Chance can't put a brain together. It cannot put an eye together. Imagine 2 cameras. It's unbelievable. And you never have to change the film. It's in color, automatically adjusts. It's just beyond belief, And you look at the other organs, and then you look at the organs of animals. It's just beyond belief what animals can do. It's like a leech, leech or mosquito. Mosquito has to have a long proboscis, sticks it in the skin, yes? But wait a minute, the guy's going to feel it, right? So when it sticks it in, it releases an anesthetic, you see. So you don't even feel it, you see. But wait a minute, even if you don't feel it, as soon as the blood leaves you, it's going to clot. So it has in it an anticoagulant, you see. Now you have to ask yourself, that's interesting. What school grants PhDs to mosquitoes in chemistry? It's impossible, What? Harvard, yeah. How? How's a mosquito that it's like, what is it? It has a coagulant and it has an anesthetic. It's beyond belief. It's just incredible what these things could do. That's the greatest proof, as far as I'm concerned, not the proof of design, the proof of complexity of all living organisms. And there are other proofs also. I once mentioned that there are 6 constants that the mathematical values go out to 30 places. And imagine 1 point and then 30 zeros at the end of the 30th place. Well, that's, you know how far out that is, right? You know how small that is? If it was off by 4 digits, then the whole thing would collapse. For instance, you know, it's like the atom. The atom has a nucleus, but in the nucleus are protons. See, but all the protons have positive charges, which mean they repel. So the question is, how can there be an atom? If you have all protons repelling each other, then nothing is stable. Everything will immediately collapse. You see, so there's a concept called a strong force, and that force holds all the protons together, and they measure that force. That force has like 30. The mathematics of that force has like 30 digits, right? Now, and if the 30th digit was off by 4 or 5 digits, then it would be too much or too little. The universe could not exist. So, what is the likelihood that the strong force exactly matches the force of repulsion? And it's not just that. There are 6 of these constants that if they're off by a couple of digits at the 30th place, you see, it's impossible. One of the greatest things is water, you know. Water, as it freezes, condenses. So if water froze all the way down to 0 and condensed, all the lakes would be frozen straight through. Then the whole thing would freeze. The whole body of water would freeze, which means all the sea life would die. So water is the only substance in existence that when it gets to 4 degrees above 0, it expands. It violates every other substance. And because it expands, the top layer is now lighter, so therefore it remains on top, you see? And only that freezes and the rest remains water. Could you imagine? It's just a lucky accident. If water froze all the way down like every liquid, all the seas would be turned to ice, which is the end of all marine life. And marine life, we know, is the food for everything, ultimately. And then you talk about plants making photosynthesis, where they can actually make energy from the sun and they churn out oxygen. I mean, the world is beyond belief in terms of its complexity. There is no answer to that. But nobody will look at that. They refuse. You see? There's a way to positively know that there has to be a supreme being.
But do they think that they could use their brain to understand everything, or do they just answer it by saying, because I can understand it doesn't mean that
be
it,
purged.
meaning who said that my brain can understand everything?
They're not thinking that
Meaning,
far.
yeah, the complexity is great, but I can't understand it. I have a
That's
small
what
brain.
they-
to understand it.
Who's talking about anybody else? We're talking there. I mean, anybody could look at something and they look at its complexity and realize, chance can't do this. What's the alternative to a designer? Chance. Chance is governed by probabilities. No probability can give rise to a cell. There's no such thing as any mathematical probability can give rise to a human cell or any cell. It can't. They know the probabilities, because remember, in order for complexity to occur, there has to be a series of actions that have to be exactly right? And to make something could be 1,000 different sequences. What's the flip a coin. What's the probability that 50 times you'll get heads? Calculate that, right? It's an awesome number, right? But that's only 50 events. You talk about these organs and so on and so forth, require thousands of events in order to line up, right? There's no probability to that. The number is beyond astronomical. And that's only one organism, one little cell. What about everything else? And so on. I mean, you know, if you want to be a Maimon, you know, you want to be a real Maimon, take a biology course. Yeah. It's the greatest emun of all. I remember I once took a course. You know, there are courses, even on DVDs, you know, and it was 72 lectures on biology. And he started from the beginning. And as he proceeded, I could not believe the complexity of a human cell. And the whole biology of the human being is beyond belief. What a cell can do, how it opens itself up. It's like, a protein has to fit in exactly like a key in a lock. It's just, how does this have the exact lock to open up that cell, and then it allows entry, and then I tell you, I walked away and say, how can anybody be an Epicurus after this? It's impossible. I remember I once gave a Shabbaton in Detroit, so I stayed in the house of a neurosurgeon. Interesting. Guy works on brains. No, I'm a
Interesting
neurosurgeon.
way of putting it.
What?
Works on brain.
It works on brains, yeah. Very interesting, So I asked him, I said, let me ask something. I said, how can a neurosurgeon be an Epicurus? In his hand, he's cutting, and he's looking at this thing. A neurosurgeon knows, He's working on the most advanced, computer advanced, it's not a computer. He's working on the most advanced, complex system in the known universe. Right? In the known universe, there's nothing like this, right? And he's looking at it, he's cutting it up and doing whatever he does. How can it be an Epicurus? It's not shaykh, And the answer is, because don't confuse me with the facts. That's what it is. If I want to be an Epicurus, I'll make it. It's evolution. Evolution cannot possibly explain this. It doesn't make a difference. It's a remez. No. And that's why the Baruch could look at these guys and say, how dare you disrupt what major religions and mankind has said, that you can't do this and survive. That's why it's going to go after them. Because they're all shoygeg, and they're all Korv amazed, really. Because deep down they know this is nonsense. But the fact that they have no Yirah Shamayim, they're not afraid of God. They're not afraid of retribution. What do I have to fear, They're nicha with what they've just done, The Baruch will take them out. Don't worry. The real problem is what he's going to do to the United States. I fear greatly for the United States, because what they have done is beyond comprehension. So that happened there of Shabbos, like I said, Chukas, which is 1242. They burnt the Talmud and everything else, which is a day of Poronius, it's Pesuga for Poronius, and that's when they've done it, and so on.
There's also an event that happened this week. The Paraduma was shipped to Israel.
Oh, it was?
Oh, was it shipped?
Yeah.
I kind of read.
Right before Shabbos.
Oh, that's
Thursday night. It was.
When was it shipped?
Oh, you mean I got it last minute?
When?
Thursday.
I went for the second time on
shipped to
Sunday.
Israel.
Yeah. It's a real thing. It's 10
Yeah, I got a picture of it hanging up
I went on
the
Sunday,
refrigerator.
and I realized.
So I'm wondering, the Perkol we're talking about now,
Paraduma.
the
So
Paraduma
where did he ship the Temple Institute?
Temple,
What are they going to do with it?
they're going to be Matar, but they Yisrael.
They're going to who?
They're going to be Matar, that's what it's for.
What are you talking about? I mean, for Mashiach.
Check it out.
You did the base of English first, huh?
No, he checked it outside Yerushalayim.
He claims that they have the offer
What?
but Moshe Darshan says that there's an offer left over from the time of Moshe
where?
that you're supposed to, he says they have it.
Where?
Temple Institute has it.
You're joking, yeah.
No, this is what he said.
Who said that?
The guy who raised the Paraduma.
So the United States right
Shake them
now is risking a
They
tsunami.
shaped them up.
Yeah. It's not just a tsunami. They are risking, forget about it. Look, you notice what's happening around the world, extreme
Because
weather.
of the school. Because of the school.
California, the drought, what happens in Europe. What happened in Texas? Remember that? They flooded Houston. Houston was flooded. They are experiencing tremendous weather extremes,
We got a flood.
Either one of two things are going to happen. And what also was frightening? What was frightening? It's interesting. I hope that was a warning. Remember a year ago? Ebola? That was frightening. Why? That can easily turn into an epidemic, could wipe out half the United States. There's no cure for this. And you remember how everybody was frightened? You wouldn't even want to go, you're afraid to go to Manhattan, because it was just astounding.
The hospitals, everything was
And not only that, it is one guy, so you need a whole team just for one guy. Could you imagine
It's not
if
just that.
3,000
We were
people
some-
get Ebola? What?
I work for medical supplies. They sold some of the
Uniforms,
outfits
yeah.
that they had to wear,
Yeah.
and in order to, I read some of the regulations on how to don it. You have to have somebody watching you don it, and it has to be. They have to go through training in exactly how.
Yeah.
It's not just some scrubs that you throw on.
No, exactly,
You have
yeah.
to- it's a
Because
whole
it's got to
system.
cover every inch of you. You know, it's unbelievable, you know? And people frightened. They had one guy in the hospital and had a whole team. You know, and that's one guy. And, you know, every once in a while, and people frightened. It was really anxiety provoking because there's no defense.
No.
You know, you get that. It's a hemorrhagic, disease. Your blood comes out of all the orifices. You're finished. You know what I'm saying? You're dead within what? A couple of days and so on. You know, and what is it? 90% death rate. I mean, it was like beyond belief. You know, and I believe the Baruch Hashem did that as a warning, and then he stopped it. Rachem. You know, it started from Africa, you know, these countries and so on, Liberia, whatever. I think they got a handle on so on. But I believe that was a warning to mankind. Look, you know, all you need is a little bug like that. Some guy, the minute a guy came from, Liberia came, and then he came, went to Texas. He goes in, infected everybody, like, what do you infect? How do you keep track? One guy could talk to 40 people in one day. So what are you going to do? Track down the 40 people? Because they themselves have talked to 40 people. You say you can have, in 1 week, 10,000 people could be infected. What are we dealing with here? You know, so and it's very worrisome. I believe that was a warning to the United States. Don't mess around. You know. So look, you're talking about plagues. You're talking about hurricanes, weather extremes. You're talking about droughts. You know, you're talking about, and so on, marbles and so on. I mean, but Sandy wiped out. I mean, people still haven't recovered from Sandy. What was that, 2 years ago? Or was it whatever and so on, you know?
And Katrina.
And then you have what?
Katrina.
I talk about Katrina, yeah. And then you have earthquakes. Forget it, you know. I think that it's important for everybody to buy property in Nevada, because that's going to be the new West Coast. That's because San Andreas Fault, that's going to sink, and Nevada will be the new beach.
No, they're talking about the
Is that?
scientists are already talking about. They're just waiting for the big one.
For
It's
the
going
big
to
one.
split California in half.
In half, yeah. So the LA, I don't know if it'll happen because you have a lot of heathen there and so on, you know. But could you imagine where half the coast goes down? They make movie out of this stuff, you know, how they made this, you know, so on. Los Angeles just fell into the ocean. So the new beachfront property is Nevada, you know, the West Coast.
But yeah, does Rebbe know any? And we have in Rebbe's neighborhood in Israel any property? Maybe we should run away with Rebbe.
I'm telling you, I'm very, very concerned about America. I have no idea what the Russians is going to do. And this is not Xera. This is not just a simple Xera. Because effectively they have destroyed America. They've destroyed America, they've destroyed the world, and all those people that would never have resorted to this type of business. Well, now, hey, it's okay, it's fine, legitimate, you know. Why not? You can't walk over to your kid anymore and say, what, are you crazy? You want to marry your friend? I mean, out of your mind? So, well, what's the problem here? It's justified, it's legal, and by guys walking around, hand in hand. What's the problem? We can tell your kid.
But it's not just here, it's in Eretz Yisrael also.
Yes.
I would say jump off a
But at least it's not
boat, but then
legal.
you're going there.
But at least it's not legal.
It's not legal there? I'm not sure.
It hasn't been legalized.
We discriminate.
I mean,
They have parades and...
I didn't say it was
and all-
illegal, but it hasn't been sanctioned by the legal system. This has now been sanctioned by the UN. That's legal. That means they, not the Supreme Court. That means they now have equal rights to you. They are now equal rights. Like I said, and after a while, I told you, some guys are already clamoring for polygamy. You know, why can't you have more than one wife? You know, that's next. You know, and then there's people who are going to say, well, why can't we do polyandry, which means one wife, the one woman to 4 husbands. So that's next. Because where do you stop? And then some guy wants to marry his dog. What's the problem here? You know what I'm saying? People do with animals. You know, he loves his dog and that's it. I mean, just think about
Yeah,
where this is going to
yeah.
go. But now everybody has legitimate taina. You know, why can't a guy have 2 wives? You know, what's the big deal with it? 3 wives. You know? I'm telling you, this opens up what's called a Pandora's box. It opens up a nightmare for people now. They're going to now push for other ways of having what's called marriage. It's beyond belief what the Supreme Court has done, you know. And they have no, and I'm not a legal anyway scholar, but they have relied on the 14th Amendment, which people say is absurd. The 14th Amendment does not refer that you could do whatever you want. It's just incredible what they have done. You know?
This is the Maisa son.
Yeah.
Is that Derech Chayav? And Ben David Ba, אלא בדרך שכולו זכאי או דרך שכולו חייב.
Yeah, but it doesn't refer to Goyim, it refers to Yidden.
Uh-huh.
The door, they're always chayiv.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a very worrisome, very worrisome.
Goyim had a scheme only until they do Mishkub Zecha?
Yeah, we're talking about that, yeah.
Where does it say that?
No, that, it's look, the very few things that the Rosh will do to destroy the world, there are not many things that man has to do. One of them is Mishkub Zecha.
Yeah, by the marble.
Marble and earthquakes, I mentioned the Yushalmi.
There was Mishkub Zecha, but there was also Gneva.
But yeah. Once they destroyed that, then the whole way.
I think the Gemara says that they're all chashudim, no?
Who?
The Gemara says that all goyim are chashudim to Mishkav Zachar.
Yeah.
So that means that it was always
Now it's legal.
Now it's legal.
Now it's in your face.
It's always there. That's not the problem. But you do it you privately, that's all. You know what I'm saying? But he's now become legalized. It's a whole different... it's astounding what that means. You know, it's astounding. You have an idea now, every religious guy, you know, two guys come over to a rabbi, or to a priest, because they're also against this, you know, and say, we want you to marry us off. And he says, no, I can't marry us off. This is
discrimination.
It's
You could be
discrimination.
arrested.
Yeah.
It's-
Racial discrimination, legal discrimination, whatever they're going to throw the book at. They've opened up the United States court system to an unbelievable amount of suits. You know? Some guy wants to get a job, you know, as a teacher in your school. You can't be a teacher in my school. You know? What do you mean? It's discrimination. You know? And you're going to have to defend yourself in court? It's insane. You know? They already had, remember, was one guy, I think 2 guys, they wanted to have a baker. Was it a couple of months ago?
Yeah,
they wanted to make a cake, and I refused. I'm not going to make a cake for this, you know? And I think they sued him or something like that.
Yeah.
You know? And they won. And this is before the Supreme Court. You see. I mean, you're going to see now the consequences of it will be devastating.
So the Supreme Court made it legal for all 50 states? Is that it?
Correct.
This just happened?
No, it's over. Supreme Court. You can't appeal the Supreme Court. It's the highest court of the land.
All
Friday.
50 states.
Friday.
The different
They
presidents
legalized
came.
throughout the United States. And they said it's constitutional. They're all protected under the Constitution. They want to get married to each other? No problem. In all 50 states. In one sweep.
Were any of those Yidden?
Anybody on the Supreme Court?
On the
There were
5.
4. They were Yidden?
No, well, one was Scalia, Alito, and Thomas or Thompson, whatever. Those 3 are not Jewish. I know Ruth Bader Ginsburg, is she still on the court? She's there, she's Jewish. She's an incredible liberal, so she's probably with the other ones. You know. But anyway.
Much destruction.
What?
For a Jew to cause so much destruction in Spanish Ginsburg.
So don't even talk about this woman. What this woman is beyond belief. You know?
It's interesting. It's, the Paraduma has Parak Ol. So is that to be Mechaper this Parak Ol? The guy some Yidden also want to be Parak Ol.
Yeah, sure.
So what's the connection between this and
I
that?
don't know. I'm not
That
talking
this
about
atones for... Well,
You're bringing a topic that I'm not even on, you know. But anyway, that's the main idea, and it's really, something which is enormously significant. It changes the game, the ground rules. Look, Rome was destroyed. Part of the reason because there were Mishkan Zach all over the place. Same thing with Greece was forget about. You know, nations are destroyed because of this stuff, because of the immorality. You know, and the United States, that's why it's a pacha to live here. You know, it really is.
Maybe time could jump out of the sinking boat, go to Eretz Yisrael, no? At this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's thousands of times better than this place. That's for sure, you know. But you're going to see. Don't be surprised if you see major things. Well, it's astounding for the Russian to wipe out. It's nothing. Like I told you, Ebola was frightening. Ebola is more frightening than an earthquake. Because there's no way you could stop it. An earthquake is just get away from that zone. Ebola, you know, everybody has it and you're finished. I mean, how are you going to avoid it, you know? You can talk to any, and they don't even know they have it. Because they have an incubation period, you know? The plague is one of the most frightening things of all. And it's so easy to happen. And like I said, I believe that Ebola scare was a warning. Don't do this, you know? And that's it. And it's something mankind cannot protect themselves, and they can't stop it. You cannot. If 1,000 people have it, it's over for the United States. Because the amount of manpower you need to stop, just for 1,000 people, you need 10,000 people to use it for the 1,000. You know, and you know what I'm saying? You can't stop that. It's just you don't have the manpower and you don't have the training to stop this. It's over with.
Look, they're chasing.
You're going to get everybody to be running away from the United States. And where are they going to go? You know? It is a pachad nourish, you know, it's really frightening. All because of Arthur Kennedy. It's incredible how one guy could do this.
Well, that's why the Kennedy family's cursed.
I don't know if it's not the Kennedy.
They were for
Not from the Kennedy?
No.
and he was the last one to
Who
say.
put him up there?
He's starting the trend.
Yeah.
He already had
He's the one. He's the one that was appointed by Obama, right?
No, I don't think so.
He wasn't.
Aren't they all the judges appointed by the president?
Yeah, he appoints and I think
Then
the
he did
Senate,
appoint.
ratifies.
Whenever there is
and
an
so on,
opening.
you know. But none of them are elected.
It's for life.
There's no elected officials here. That's the joke about
Obama's
it.
legacy.
It's the same thing in Eretz Yisrael. That Supreme Court is not elected by anybody. That Supreme Court in Eretz Yisrael is decided by, I think, 9-member committee. 3 are former Supreme Court guys, not former, sit on the Supreme Court. That means they owe their allegiance to the judges. That's conflict of interest. It means I have to do what you say because I want to be nominated for the Supreme Court. It's a joke. In no country in democracy in the world does it operate like Eretz Yisrael. Yeah, it's laughable. The democracy in Israel is laughable, you know. And all of a sudden they can outlaw anything that the Knesset said. Who ever heard of something like that? There's no constitution that they could say it's unconstitutional. They just decide whatever they want. That Meshiggah Aaron Barak said everything is justifiable or judicial, you know. I wonder if he tells that to his wife. You want this? Take it to court. You know? You have a lot of crazies running the world. You have a lot of arrogant people running the world. This is the problem. You know?
That's
Money,
normal.
arrogant.
Who wants to rule the world if not for the arrogant people?
Yeah. It's astounding. But I'll tell you one thing, I believe, you know, to end on a happy note, you know, that this enormous descent into immorality and a descent into catastrophe, you know, does signal the end in many ways.
That's a happy note.
That's the happy note, yeah. That the Mashiach has to come because of this. Because from here there is no up.
There's no down. You mean.
Well, there's no down and you can't reverse. You cannot reverse the Supreme Court.
Wow.
You can't because it's the
The
law.
next president can't change.
No, it's the law of the land. You know, these guys, it's permanent. You know, once they say it's mutter, it is mutter, le'olam v'oed. The only way the Moshe could do it, you know, without killing everybody else, is if all of a sudden, all 5 people that mattered it die in the same accident. Just these 5.
Might happen.
Why?
How would that
Why?
reverse
Why is that
anything?
changing?
Because then everybody would And then people get, wow, what are the chances, you see? And everybody realizes it is the hand of God. In other words, when God has to do something which is so clearly His hand that everybody will be frightened.
Then you're dealing with Nisan Nikloyim, which is already...
Yeah, fine, but you have to save the world. I mean, we're now going to look at a planet that's on the way down. That's what it is, you know? And once this... You have no idea what this is going to do to America. I don't mean punishment-wise, in terms of the morality. You're going to now see homosexuals all over the place. Like I said, even guys who are sitting on the fence will now become homosexuals because it's now legitimate and it's an alternative lifestyle. You're going to see this all over the place and so on, you know. So
now mainstream, not alternative.
Well, it'll become mainstream. Yeah, you'll now see textbooks in schools where where you have in one book for kids, you have mom and dad and dad and dad.
Forget
right?
textbooks.
Or mom and mom.
What? Children's books.
That's what I mean. Yeah, I meant children.
Right, it's going to be a requirement.
By the way, you have that going on in Europe. Yeah, I just heard on the radio. You have that going on in Europe, There actually was a school where they would take a kid and let him lie down, and then everybody would try to see, well, is he male or female, and is there really a difference? It's unbelievable what was going on. And the parents went crazy on that. So where does the school have a right to do that? And so on, The schools now, it is there, they actually want to, dissolve the difference between a man and a woman. That they're totally equal. It means a man can marry a man, no problem. Women can marry a man, there's no problem. A woman can marry a woman, and there's no problem in this. You're now going to have an active push to legitimatize, well, it already is legal, but to elevate it to the status equal to anything else. And you're going to see that in children's books, public schools, they're now going to have curriculum based on this, because it's now legal. This is a nightmare of which we cannot even begin to understand the depth of the nightmare. And I believe that Moshe will not tolerate this, so he does one of two things. Either he openly reveals with such a zamin oynish that nobody can escape the conclusion that God is in charge. He has to what's called put the. What does it say? Bi'alta horom mimkebecha.
Well, that's Mashiach already.
Well, yeah, V'loisosifun la'asos es a roa zois. V'chol ha'om yiru v'yishmol. Means mom's in the Torah. How many times does it say? V'chol ha'om yiru v'yishmol. They will see and they will listen and they will be afraid. V'vi'alta horom v'loisosifun la'asos es a davar zeh. And the only way to do it, because there has to be some type of a deterrent, a wake-up call. And I believe, if all 5 died in one accident, a misa mishuna, I mean, everybody would, you'd have all the columnists saying, this can't be an accident, and so on.
One like we said, even if it's an accident, they'll just write it off. Like, okay,
maybe, but
they won't even write it.
But
it won't.
Look, the Russian knows what he has to do, and if not that, then America will not have charata. You know what I'm saying? They will not overturn. But you can overturn the Supreme Court. You can. Well, it's a little hard. The Congress has to pass a law, but then the Supreme Court could judge that law if it's constitutional or not. So they have to pass an amendment by the states, where the states amend the Constitution. I mean, you're talking about a process that takes years, But it is possible. The Congress has to create an amendment. There's different ways to do that. State ratification or something like that. State conventions and all that. I think 2/3 of the state, if they pass a new amendment, it becomes part of the Constitution. But that can take years. Each state has to vote on it. It's like a nightmare. But get ready for the fireworks. But I believe it is an indication of the Yerid of mankind, and I believe that Mashiach is on the way because of this.
Amen.
Okay. This ends our series for this month, and listen, hope everyone has a great summer.
You too have a great summer.
Thank you.
Safe,
uneventful trip.
What?
Safe, uneventful trip.
I'll tell you one thing, at least I won't be in America. Because I am really worried about what's going to happen to this place. Terrible.
Daven for us.
I'm in California.
California. I told you what to do. You got to buy new Nevada beachfront property.